Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another video here on Free Will Photos. And today what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through using the selection tools inside of AI to build a composite image. Now, this is going to be a long video, and if I get to it, I will put chapters down below so that way you can jump through and find portions that you find interesting to yourself. But I think this is just going to be a really fun video. So without further ado, let's dive into the computer. Here we are inside of ON1 Photo Raw, and I have a photo of a prairie dog looking into this wooden jar looking type of thing. And we're going to go ahead and try and composite this into another image. Now, we're going to be doing a few different things here. All right. So the first thing that we need to do is bring in our background image. Now, I've already gone to Pexels, and I found an image. You can look in the description box below. You'll be able to find the same image or a link to the image. But the goal here is really just to get you to understand how to build a composite. You don't have to use this particular image. I just thought it worked well with the source image, which is what I photographed at the National Zoo of this prairie dog. Now, to go ahead and bring in an additional image into ON1, what we want to do is come over to our layers panel. If yours is collapsed, just go ahead and click on the name layer or layers, and then click the plus icon, the very first icon down there at the bottom. You'll need to navigate on your computer to wherever your photo that you want to import is located. And I've already done that just to save us some time. And then I'm just going to click on it and then come down to the bottom and click add as layer. Now what ON1 is going to do is pull this image in, and it puts it on top of my image. All right. Now, this is a little bit more of an advanced tutorial, so if this is something that you got to go back and watch multiple times over, then by all means, please do. But understand the principles, or when you understand principles of how to use ON1, you can really start to expand where your creative thoughts can go. All right, and that's kind of what I want to showcase here. So what I need to do here is make this fit my canvas size. All right. So to do that, I'm going to make sure that I'm on the actual image layer of the background. And I'm going to come over to this little crosshair looking thing, which is the transform tool. You could hit the letter V on the keyboard if you want to use a keyboard shortcut, but there's no need for that. And then what I'm going to do is just hit this little scale to fit or fill canvas. All right. That's going to just instantly jump it all the way up. It covers my other image, and I'm going to scale it up a little bit larger because down at the bottom, I can see, if you look down here at the bottom of the image, you can see like there's a little bit of overlap, and I don't want that in my final image. So I'm just going to scale this up just a little bit more. There we go. I want to go to 180 there. And I think that this works well. I'll reposition this just a little bit if I can speak. There we go. I think that looks good. So now what I need to do is come over to my prairie dog image, and then I need to click and drag this above the background image because I need the prairie dog to be on top of that background. Now, what I'm going to do is relatively scale down the prairie dog to the background image so that way my dimensions look right, because right now the prairie dog is way too big for that overall background. So what I'm going to do is lower the opacity of my prairie dog image so I can see the prairie dog and the tree. Okay. So now all I'm going to do is come over to the scale for making sure that I'm on the prairie dog image still. I'm also on my move tool or transform tool. And then I'm just going to click and drag the scale down until he gets to a relative size of what I think he should be for the tree. Maybe bring him up a little bit more. And I can always fix this a little bit later, but it's always good to get the relative size first. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the opacity. And now I am going to start working with masking out the prairie dog from this background. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come over here to zoom, and I want to zoom in just a little bit. Makes it a little bit easier for me to make the selection that I want to make. All right. I'm going to go ahead and click on the layer mask for the prairie dog. It's important that you do this because that's where I want ON1 to make the selection and to make the cutout. All right. So essentially what I'm about to do is cut the prairie dog out. Like if I had a pair of scissors and I was going to go all the way around the prairie dog and cut them out, that's what ON1 is about to do for me. Now, once I have the layer mask selected, I can come up here to my properties for the layer mask and click this little drop down, and I get the quick mask AI brush. Now with the quick mask selection tool, I can just hover over the prairie dog and anything that I want to select, and it's going to turn blue. Now, if you don't want to go piece by piece like this, and that takes a little bit of time, what you can do is click and drag a selection around the items that you want to have selected in your image. And then ON1's going to like do some background rendering to figure out, how that should play out. So I'm just going to come through here and make sure that I'm selecting every aspect. I'll even get this little rock. And I'll get under here as well. So click and drag a selection just so that way ON1 can think about what needs to get selected over there. Doesn't seem like it picked up anything on that particular piece, but that's okay. We can always work with it because masks are non-destructive. All right. This is like one of those Photoshop-esque type things. If you have ever worked in Photoshop and you've made masking selections, and you can always like paint in and paint out and do all that good stuff using the brush tool. That's essentially what we're getting right here. So I'm not overly concerned about making a perfect selection right now because with composites, there's usually this back and forth. So I'm just going to make a relatively good selection right now, which I think we have. Okay. Now, once I have my selection made, I want to paint in all of this, because I want ON1 to keep this. If I wanted ON1 to delete this, then I would click on erase, but I want it to paint in. So I'm just going to go ahead and click the check mark. ON1's going to think itself through, and I'm going to get some coffee. Okay, so now you can see the background as well as this this cutout that we have with our prairie dog, and we got to clean it up a little bit. All right, so with the mask still selected, this is where I like to grab the masking brush, and I'm just going to make sure my flow is up to 100, and I'm going to make a small brush. We'll zoom in here. All right. So that way I know I'm getting relatively good selection, and I want to actually paint this out. All right. So make sure you're on erase, and then I want to erase this background that's right in between the prairie dog's neck and arm here up to that little jar. And I'm not going to make this perfect for the sake of time on the tutorial, but you definitely would want to spend some time to make sure that you get this the way that you want it to be for your image and make it realistic and believable to your creative interests. All right. But for the sake of just teaching the principle, you will want to spend some time cleaning that up. Okay, so now we'll hover around here, and what I'm looking for is gaps in my mask. This may be one. Let me just zoom out so I can see it better. No, that's not one. That's actually the bottom, so I think we selected that quite well. Other than that little area, I'm not seeing any issues with what was selected. So now when it comes to building composite images, you got to kind of place your subject in the frame where you want the subject to go. And that's where the move tool is. I'm just going to hit the letter V on the keyboard this time. And I'm going to move our prairie dog around. I kind of want his feet to be on this area here. And I want this little wooden thing to look like part of the tree. All right. So part of this is visualizing and trying to figure out like, okay, where do I need to put certain aspects? And it also looks like we're missing one of his feet. So let me fix that real quick, because that's going to drive me crazy as I'm trying to figure out like where his feet are in the image. All right, so let's zoom in. I think one time is good there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and hit plus. And I'm going to paint in a lot of information. There's his foot. All right. And so now what I'm going to do, now that I know that his foot is like relatively right here, I'm going to hit Command Z. So that way I don't have a whole lot of cleanup. And I'm going to make my brush size smaller. And I'm just going to paint this little area in. All right. And I'll clean this up a little bit later. But in fact, I'll clean it up now. All right. It won't be absolutely perfect, but it'll definitely get us where we need to be. So there's this foot, and let's go Shift and X. And let's just go ahead and paint this away. All right, and I am using just the basic brush here with a 100% feathered edge, and I'm just painting around the edge here. That does cause a little bit of a glow, I'm not gonna lie. That's just the way it goes sometimes, all right? But like I said, I'm not making this perfect. You could like zoom in like crazy and really clean this up. You could even use the refinement tools. But I'm not going to do that. And honestly, this area is likely going to be in shadow anyhow. So I'm not overly concerned about having accuracy on this part of the image overall, because I'm going to put it in shadow anyhow. Like, I just know that that's what I want to do. And that's why it's important to have a plan, relatively have a plan. All right. So I can actually scale this back up a little bit, because I know that I want one of his feet to be here, and then I want that other one to be on this brighter little ledge, right? Because you could see how that's just kind of going up. All right. And this actually helps with building perspective and relative perspective in an image. So I really do like that, you know, I happened to select an image that was working for the background. All right. So I'll do something maybe like that. All right. We'll leave a little bit of a gap so we can put some dimension into the photo, and that should be good. All right. So now comes the even more fun part. All right. We're going to continue working with the mask, but this time what I need to do is I need to make this little thing look like it's part of this tree. All right. Right now, it doesn't look like it's part of this tree. So what I'm going to do is, using my masking brush, just the basic brush, I'm going to leave my flow up to 100. I'm going to make it a little bit larger though. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then all I'm going to do is just erase this away. Okay. Bringing back the layer underneath. That's all that's happening. All right. It's not gone forever, because if I wanted to, I could paint this back in, and that's just the power of masking. And I like what's happening there. And I'm actually going to leave that little rock because it gives, I guess, understanding of why this piece may be sticking out. And it also looks like it's part of the tree as well. So I'm going to leave that as it is, but I do want to get rid of this little metal band, because that is a telltale that it's probably not part of the tree. So I'm just going to come around here and start painting in the background. And this is the beauty of having a background that kind of blends decently with your image. All right. You always want to pick backgrounds that look natural to the thing. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say always, because creative workflow is absolutely a thing, or a creative interpretation. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and erase up to there. And I may do something a little bit different with that. In fact, I think I will. So let's just undo that, and we'll paint this back in, that portion. And I think that will be good. I'm going to clone stamp that later to make it look a little bit better. All right. So let's zoom back out. And so far, I think we're doing well. All right. You're starting to see the power of having masks, so you can really develop your images. But what we need to do is kind of work on the background itself to make the depth of field look the way that we want it to. Well, in order to do that, I need to click on the background layer and click Add Filter. We're going to go ahead and add in a lens blur filter. All right. Now, it's going to look a little odd at first, but we're going to work this out to make it make sense. And in fact, I'm just going to go ahead and throw in a reflected gradient. So I'm going to click on the lens blur and then click this drop down up here. And we are going to select the gradient mask. And then in the drop down, we're going to select reflected gradient. And I'm just going to click right here in the middle. We'll rotate this around. And this gives me two planes that I can kind of work on how I want that blur to build into the image. And essentially what I want to do is I want the foreground to be pretty blurry. Not going to lie. All right. We're going to make the foreground pretty blurry. And I'm even going to bring it I'm looking at the foot here. I think that's going to work like so. So that way it makes sense why the prairie dog and this portion of the tree is a little bit more in focus than the rest of the image. And then I'm going to maybe even rotate this just a little bit more. Yeah, I think that works. And then that allows me to bring this further up. And, you know, this is just the fun of the trial and error that you have to go through when you are creating something that may not have exist or doesn't exist. Because, I mean, this is not a real scene, right? I just made this scene up. But it's starting to look a little bit more believable and understandable, or at least agreeable. That's what I'm getting out of this. So I think that that's going to do quite well. And I don't want to make it like crazy blurry in the background. I just want to make it a little blurred. And maybe we'll work on the blooming because I don't think I really need the blooming. And then we'll bring the brightness down just a little bit. Okay. And in fact, that makes me remember now, we need to blend the brightness of the prairie dog as well as this piece of the wood that is now part of our tree in with our background. So it makes a cohesive exposure adjustment or tonal adjustment. So what I like to do here is just come over to the develop, and on my background, I'm probably just going to pull down on the exposure just a little bit, and that already naturally matches. But I actually like the brightness that was coming through in the original image. So what I want to do is actually match the prairie dog to the overall image. And so you can see I was already tonally adjusting the prairie dog, or at least that image by itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and reset those adjustments, and I'm going to blend this in bring up the exposure just a touch here. And I am doing this all by eye. There are ways of like accurately getting the tonal adjustments and all of that, but I'm just doing this by eye. And I think that that will be all right. And maybe we'll pull down on the highlights, and the background's a little bit more contrasty, so I'm going to make him a little bit more contrasty. And just like that, I feel like he fits better in the scene than when I didn't have this adjustment. So, you know, it's starting to shape up. I really like where we're going here and how far we've come. And honestly, you could probably stop right here and be perfectly fine. But I want to go further because I know that I can get a lot more out of this. So we're going to come back to our background image. And what I want to do is make a local adjustment. I'm going to hit add adjustment, and I'm going to make a negative exposure adjustment. I have to start putting in shadows to the image. All right. And to do that, I need to put them right under the feet of the prairie dog because that just makes sense. And it helps him fit in with the scene. If you don't have shadows for your subject, lighting makes a huge difference in making composites like this. And when you don't add shadows, it just makes the whole thing look a little off. All right. So I want to make sure I have shadows in here to build up what makes sense. And then on the prairie dog, I'm actually going to increase the shadows here because this is a backlit scene, or at least it looks more backlit. You can tell that the light is mainly back here and then hitting the tree there, but I have a lot of light on the front side of this jar. So I really need to like make this blend a lot better. So what I'm going to do is take the background now and make note that I'm doing this after I've added in the lens blur, so I have my depth of field making sense. And I've also added in the shadow that I needed for the main subject here. So now what I'm going to do is take the background layer, I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to take the copy of that and put it on top of my prairie dog. He's going to go away, but don't worry about it, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the layer mask and I am going to hit invert, and the prairie dog's going to come back. So now I'm going to click on the mask for the background that I just added. And this is where you'll want to come up to the top, select a flow. I recommend anything below 50. So I normally go between 30 and 40 for this aspect of the blending process. And I vary the size of my brush to make this look as organic and natural as possible. You'll go ahead and select paint with a feather of 100%. And then I'm just going to come around the edges of this tree because I want to blend in the tree with this pot. All right. And you could see, or I keep calling it a pot because I know it's a pot, but I want it to be a part of the tree. So what I need to do is make sure that I make it look like part of the tree. Now, the problem that I'm running into here is I'm coming up to the edge of the tree. And if I just go ahead and paint this all the way in, you'll see like that just doesn't look natural. So I need to erase this and start working this in a little bit differently, which is fine because again, the reason we go with a low flow is so we can really tie in what's happening with the tree. Okay. Or with both layers. I'm sorry. That's what we're doing here. And I know that there isn't much of anything. So if I were to turn this off, like the tree, it stops right here. And I'm not overly excited for that to be in the image. I want this to actually be part of the image. So I'm going to leave that be, but I will try and blend just the bottom portion of that a little bit better. We'll go something like that. Okay, so once that's done, now it is this darkening aspect that we have to do. And that's going to happen on a different layer, all right? So what I want to do now is really come over here and blend the feet. I want to make the feet more believable overall in the image. And the way that I do that is I just bring a little bit of the background over the feet. So that way it's like they're interacting with the image and I'm making the prairie dog part of the image overall. And what I'm actually starting to get is maybe this should have been further over here, like in lining up this notch with the tree. So let me check something. Let's go ahead and grab the move tool. Let's see what happens if I move this over. Maybe somewhere like that. But now what I can do is click on the background here. Let's reset this mask and invert it. And that actually fits way more natural than the other. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click on the mask now. And you know, this is actually what's cool about being able to mask stuff in and out. And that's why I enjoy using software like this. And now what we're going to do is just paint over and bring this back into the tree. And that fits a lot better. Look at how much, and yeah, that just works so much better. You know, don't get too committed to your edits. And then what I'm going to do is see if I can like drag some of this mossy green stuff over the top here. And that gives me, you know, a little bit more cohesion, and maybe even come down there one more time. I really need to darken this area because light's not hitting there. And I think that actually did it. That did at least a better job, right? It's starting to blend way better now. So I'm going to go with that. That looks like way better overall. So we're at a very interesting point in our overall composite. And now what I think it's time to do is actually, I got to get these, got to bring these feet into the composite by painting a little bit of the background layer over our prairie dog. Forgot to do that. All right, so now that we have all of that situated, it's time to move on to the next step. And this is adding in a stamped layer because I don't want to get rid of all of my work. So, and I guess it's also good to clean up your work. So we're going to call this BG cover up. And then we're just going to call this BG primary. And then we're going to call this subject. So now that I have everything renamed inside of my layers panel for cleanliness, I am going to make sure that I have all three of my layers turned on. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to click on new stamped layer. Now you can use merge visible or merge layer, but that's more destructive and I want to work non-destructively. So I'm going to go ahead and hit new stamped layer. What ON1 is going to do is it's going to take all of those layers and it's going to turn them into a singular layer. So now if I turn off all of these layers down here, you can see that I still have my image. But if I turn this off, then I get my transparent background showing that there's nothing there. All right. So moving forward from here, I am working with one image of really the three composites. All right. So I've gone from having a singular image to having now only one image. And it's really important for me to start shaping the light the way that I want it to be, the colors and things of that sort. So what I'm going to do is add an adjustment, and I want to darken this area because it just doesn't look quite the same. So I'm just going to paint over this area, and one pass at 30-something% seems to do it. And then I'm going to rename this bark. Yeah, I don't know. And then we'll add in another adjustment, and I want to get underneath the belly of the prairie dog here. All right, so I'm just going to make that area darker, and you can see how this is starting to blend a lot better overall with the prairie dog. All right, and I like where that is going. I really do. So now what I want to do is work on the prairie dog itself and get it to blend with the overall area. Okay, so the way that I'm going to do that is come over to effects. We're going to hit add filter, and then we're going to go with a color enhancer, mostly because the color enhancer is just, in my opinion, more superior to everything else. And what I need to do is essentially match the colors. And there's my dog. I need to match the colors with the background. So mainly on the prairie dog though. So what I'm going to do is let's go with the, we're going to click on the mask, and we're going to make a selection of just the prairie dog. All right. So we'll click here. We'll click the quick AI selection mask. It's got to re-render the selection mask or the AI analyzation because to ON1, this is a new image overall as opposed to the other three images that we were working. So we'll let ON1 do its thing, and I'll get some coffee. All right, so ON1 has finished its rendering, so I'm just going to click and drag a selection around the prairie dog like so. And let's see what ON1 picks up. Does a good job there. I'm going to select his foot, I think. Let's just do that. Let ON1 think that through. Okay. And then we're going to select his tail, so that way just the prairie dog is selected in this particular mask. And then we're going to paint, so we'll hit the check mark. And so now whenever I make changes in this color enhancer, it's only going to make changes to the prairie dog and not the rest of the image, which is what I want. And we may need to feather this a little bit, but let's go ahead and add in some greens. So we are going to, I don't know what I was thinking. I chose color enhancer. I meant to choose a curves tool, and I'm like, why is this not working? Okay, so don't be like me. All right, curves tool. Let's go ahead and grab this mask. Let's go ahead and grab this mask. So we're going to click copy. At least making the mask, we can use that. So we'll do that, and then we'll click on the mask itself, and we will paste that mask. All right. So now when I come over to the green, I should be able to add some greens to the image. Now, I don't need to add a whole lot. I just need to add enough to make him blend with the image. And you see, like, that's all that it really took, at least to my eye. And I'm not sure how this is coming through on YouTube, but just a hint of greens, because there is this green in the forest that we just needed to add to make the prairie dog match with the scenery, at least to my eye. So I'm going to go with that because I think that matches way better for the overall image. And I'm not mad at it. I don't know if this is doing anything, so we'll get rid of that color enhancer because I'm not going to mess with that. So now, and I'm going to call this PD for prairie dog, and we'll call this green add there. I don't know. Just something to help me remember that is me adding the green to the prairie dog. So now I think it's time to actually do the cleanup. I said that I was going to fix this little band issue that's down here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to zoom in, and then we're going to come over to our refining tools. We are going to grab the clone stamp tool. Now, holding down the Option key, I am going to select a piece that I think will blend well, because I really just want to make this look like organic rock. All right, so let's try something from over here. Let's see what happens. And we'll just kind of paint this in just like so. And I think, at first glance, no one is going to think otherwise about this. And I probably need to make that a little bit darker. So what we'll do is we'll come over to local adjustments. We'll add an adjustment. And I am just going to paint that negative exposure right over there. Boom. You wouldn't even be able to tell that I clone stamped that area. It looks like it's just a part of the natural environment, and it doesn't look very repetitive. So I'm going to roll with that, and we'll leave that be. I'm not going to worry about renaming that adjustment for the sake of moving the tutorial along. So now what I think it's time to do is create a look over the entire image, and that's going to help tie everything together. So one of the best ways of doing that is by adding in a LUT, and I'll come over here to the LUTs, and let's see if I can find a LUT that will look good for this particular image. We can come to color grading, and I'm just going to kind of cycle through these and see which one I like. I really like this one. Yeah, that one doesn't look too bad. That one looks odd. Nope. This one doesn't look too bad either. And don't like that one. Okay, so I think I said this one, and there was another one too, but let's contrast it just a little bit more. And then I'm going to pull down on the opacity of this because I don't want to lose the complete fill of the original image, but I do want to make sure that it blends pretty decent. And then the last thing that I'll do, like I do on all of my images, is I'm going to hit add adjustment, hit the letter M, and we will add in a vignette this time. We'll click right there, and then I'll wait for my overlay to pop up so I can modify this. Eventually there it is. Okay. And then I'm just going to pull this in so that way we're not focusing on anything else except for the prairie dog in this particular image. And we'll do something like that. Maybe pull that in. think we are probably good. And to really help this kind of sell a little bit better, let's pull in some of the information from the right side. So that way we're not spending too much of our time over there on the right side. Now it feels too centered. And this is all nitpicking. So, you know, it is what it is. And this is just for me personally. I think that looks good. And I think it would even be beneficial to add in a sunshine filter. Yeah, a sunshine filter. And I'll leave it at the default. And then let's throw on a glow filter over the top to make this that much more interesting. And then I feel like I just need to really work on the back side, or the bottom portion here, with some more shadow. So we're just going to add in some more shadow to this area to help him blend a little bit better down here, because I didn't do the greatest job at getting his feet to blend. But if it's in shadow, then you're telling the viewer, don't look over here. Don't look at the shadows. And I think that that's fair. So I think we got a pretty good image. This is, after the composite was made. And then this is once the composite was made and we started throwing in some basic edits to really adjust the image overall. This is what we got. So hopefully you found some value in this content. I know that this may be a little bit more advanced than the typical use of ON1 as a photographer, but I went to the zoo and I captured this photo and said, okay, what else can I do with my images besides just making simple edits inside of ON1? And I think that this opens up the possibility of what else you can do with your images. And that ON1, with the tools that are in it now, with the selection tools, you can get a lot more in depth with your edits, and you can really start to imagine different things. And I think that that's cool. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Let me know if you've ever tried doing composites in ON1, and if this was helpful for either one, inspiring you to do composites, or two, to help you build better composites inside of ON1. I'd love to hear your feedback. And if you want to save some money and help out the channel, consider using my affiliate link or affiliate code FreeWillPhotos20 when you shop over at the ON1 store. Until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.